The following story was sent to us by a scam victim who lost nearly $500,000 in an online romance scam. While that amount of money can seem staggering, these type of scams happen all the time, and people lose tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to these kinds of scammers. I was sitting on Tinder thumbing through as you do on a bored weekend night. I had used Tinder for local dates before, trying to find Mr. Right, but most were Mr. Creepies. For context, I'm 48 years old, divorced going on 7 years. I have no kids. I found out Tinder has a passport feature which allows you to look further for love. You can match with men in other locations other than the radius you normally would set it at. I live in Washington. I wasn't really expecting, nor was I wanting to have a long-distance love with some dude from England, but I guess being bored, I wanted to see how far this net could be cast, and part of me thought it would be easier to get to know someone who's far away, rather than just matching and meeting right away for dinner in person. I'm a platinum member, so I dropped a pin on London for fun, and ended up matching with a man named Gerald. He was very handsome and around the same age as me on his profile. We started a chat bubble and he asked if we could chat on WhatsApp, and I was open to it. We exchanged numbers and I told him I don't normally give out my numbers to strangers. He got a little offensive, saying he wasn't a stranger and didn't know what I meant by that. We started talking on Whats. His number was from the UK, and he told me he was an engineer working off the coast of Norway on an oil project. He would be at sea for a few months. He said he was born in Germany and raised by his parents in Berlin, but he moved to England for school, and after graduation he married, had a child with his late wife who died of cancer, and currently lives in Manchester, England, but has an office in London, which is why he set his Tinder profile to London, as he spends a lot of time in London due to work and travels when on contract. He has a son who is 18 years old and away at boarding school. He told me he had been single for several years after his wife's passing, and was in one online relationship with a woman over a year ago who scammed him out of money, so he was very cautious of who he talks to online. He said he doesn't want to waste time with scammers and began a video chat with me. I was surprised, and he was so forward, with a video chat right away, but I picked up. His side had no camera on. He said due to being on the ship, he was unable to video at the moment, as he was in an office with private documents and cameras watching the workers. But he wanted me to show myself on camera to ensure I was not a fake. He asked me to wave and blow a kiss, and I did just that, and he ended the video call. We went back to texting. It seemed odd to me, but I guess at the time I could see his concern after being scammed by some woman. He asked me a lot of questions. My favorite food, favorite color, music, hobbies, the typical stuff you ask when getting acquainted with somebody online. I didn't find it too invasive. It more or less showed that he was interested in me and getting to know me. He told me that his parents died when he was away at college in a car accident. Then his wife died a year later, so he had no one other than his son, but his son is now an adult and away at school. He said his son was in a special boarding school for military training to become a pilot. He was a breath of fresh air to me, though. He seemed very successful, and most guys on Tinder I had matched with locally were only after one thing, and then wanted to split the meal with coupons, or were unemployed or secretly married. The dating pool is murky if you don't know. He was sophisticated, a world traveler, contracts, and an education. I can see why women fall easily for this type of man when you compare it to the other men you deal with on dating sites. We started this online friendship, but he told me he was not here to play games. He was not here to waste time. He wanted a genuine woman to be in a relationship with. He asked about my living situation. I own my own home near Tacoma, and after my divorce, I worked hard to pay for my own home. I work in marketing for a retailer, so I had the drive and ability to make my own way after my failed marriage. I know I overshared with him, but I felt this connection, and he always asked me about my day, my job, how my employment works, and looking at it now, I see he was sizing me up during that first few weeks of getting to know me. I thought he had a genuine interest in me. Gerald, or Jerry is what I called him, always had a listening ear. He told me some about his late wife, about the loss of her and how hard it is on his son and him, but that it was time for him to find real love. When I asked him about how he was scammed online by this woman, he said he met her on social media, and after he was scammed, he deleted his social media account. He said she pretended to want to marry him and then duped him out of thousands of dollars. He said he was having issues with his bank while working at sea, and he had asked her to deposit one of his checks until he could get his bank situation fixed, and she took the deposit and blocked him. He said it was for $10,000 and that the police have not caught her yet. I felt bad for him, and I let him know I wasn't that way. I had lots of my own money, and I never needed to steal or take from him or anyone. Jerry said that made him very happy, and he felt this deep connection to me. We kept up our chats, and he called me a few times when he was finished for the day with work. He had a very, very thick accent, and sometimes it was hard to understand him, but he said he grew up in Germany, and his mother was a country woman from Germany, so he learned of her strong accent. I just took everything he said as gospel. He even spoke to me a few times in German, some phrases including how he loved me. I was falling for him, and he was falling for me, but he kept stressing he was afraid of being hurt or scammed. I told him to let his guard down with me. I wasn't after his money. He had told me several times he was on contract, and once it ended, he would receive a $50,000 bonus, and then he would come and visit me. We talked often about meeting, and I would send him photos of my house, my land that my house sits on, the trees, and all the snow. He said he had never seen snow before, which surprised me as Germany gets snow. He said he was always at sea during the winter months, and he's never been in snow. I found that a little unusual and thought maybe he was playing that up to make me feel special to show him the snow when he visits me. Jerry said his birthday was December 15th, and by this time we'd been talking for 3 months. I had asked what he wanted for his birthday, and he said he wanted my love and commitment. I told him he has that. What can I buy you? You're at sea so often. He said his phone runs low sometimes due to us talking so much. He said he could really use an iTunes gift card to keep his phone going. I've never used an Apple phone, so I assumed the iTunes were like phone cards to add minutes. I ended up buying him $200 worth of iTunes cards and sending them to him through WhatsApp, and he was so thankful. We talked nearly daily, sometimes for hours. He was in and out of the rig and would sometimes go to London to his office and then return back to projects. He even went home one week and showed me pictures of his house. It looked beautiful, and pictures of his son and his cars. He then would have to return to more projects. He said that he had a maid and a caretaker to check on his home, but he would also come home to ensure they were doing their jobs. He told me that once he had a maid who had stolen some priceless art from his house, so he was careful with any new people he had hired. This poor man had been scammed online and had a maid steal his things, and I did so much to ensure he knew I wasn't like the rest of the women who had been in his life. Jerry asked for my address several times, and I always said I would meet him at the airport when we met. However, this time he wanted to send me a gift. And I felt like we were in a real relationship, even if it was just online. To me, it was real. We talked, we voice chatted. The only thing missing was him being in the flesh with me, so I gave him my address. A few days later, a beautiful bouquet of roses arrived at my door. They were long-stemmed, beautiful roses. I've never seen anything so nice. The card said, "I love you more than life itself. Love, Jerry." I had never really gotten roses like this from a person I was dating, let alone someone from online. I cried when I got them, and I called Jerry on WhatsApp right away. He didn't answer. And then I called him again, and he did answer, and it sounded like he was on a busy street. I could hear horns honking and people noises like heavy traffic and talking. I was confused as he said he would be working at sea for a few weeks. When I asked him about this, he hung up on me. I tried calling back several times but got no answer. Jerry finally texted me a photo of a burned oil platform. He said they were evacuated off the rig due to a fire, and he was sitting in traffic with his other workers, and they were going to head to London. They said they'd been evacuated, flown to Heathrow Airport from Norway, and they were sitting on a bus. He said he didn't have time to message me as the fire broke out quickly, and he was waiting for the bus to take them to the office as several workers were still in Norway and had been badly injured. I was upset and I asked if he was okay. He said yes, but he inhaled some smoke and started coughing while we talked on the phone. I told him I got his flowers and he was happy, but he said that he realized during this fire that life is flashing before his eyes and so short. He wants to marry me as he loves me. He asked me if I would marry him. He said that life is so short for him. He realized during the rig fire that he didn't want to wait any longer. He wanted a wife. And he proposed over the phone. I heard this loud echo while he asked, and I said yes very loudly. Yes, I'll marry you. After I said that, I heard men cheering in the background. And I asked if I was on speakerphone. Jerry said yes, all his workers were listening and they were all so happy for us. I felt embarrassed, but at the same time I was happy. I asked what he would have done if I'd said no, and he said he would have cried. He said once his contract is over, he wants me to come live with him in Manchester. He said he looked into a visa for me to come and begged me to start a life with him in England. I could hear tears in his voice, and it cracked when I hesitated to answer. He told me how short life is, and I would have everything I would ever need here. I was stuck between not knowing and thinking about my life here. I had a few distant family members, and as I said, I have no kids, and while I love my job, I was burned out. Jerry urged me to prepare, sell my home, my car, sell everything and get ready. He then sent photos of his home again, and I told him I need a little time to evaluate how to even begin. He asked for my email address to send me documents to fill out regarding the marriage license and immigration to the UK. It looked real to me. He said he would sponsor me and we would live in his home. I would have everything I need, and I asked him for time to get things together, and he agreed. Later that night, Jerry video called me, which was something we had never done before. I was not prepared. He had always had his private quarters on the rig, and he told me cameras were forbidden due to the nature of the work. They couldn't video chat. When he called, it was him. He was sitting at his desk. The video lagged a bit, but his voice matched, but the video was slow. I don't know how to explain it. I chalked it up to the connection being from overseas. We video chatted for about a minute. He wanted to send me lots of love and hoped I would be living with him soon as his wife. He told me he had to go as he was busy writing reports about the fire, but he wanted to see my beautiful face. I was so excited. As I said, video wasn't something we had done before. Jerry then started sending me video clips of himself, at least every few days. Some of him jogging or outside, others in his office. It honestly made me feel closer to him and better about my decision to make this move. I filled out the documents he had sent, including uploading a picture of my passport so he could apply for our immigration for me to come there. I spoke to a few close friends about my decision to move. They were happy, and not a single one said anything negative, as they could see how happy I was. My family was a different story, and that's a whole other ball of wax, as I am distant from them after my divorce. They think I should have stayed with my ex-husband when I clearly wasn't happy, so my family wasn't thrilled, but we're not close either, so my life and my decision is basically my own. I ended up contacting a realtor about putting my house up for sale. The market was pretty good, and he felt he could easily get $480,000 for my home. I wasn't exactly in Tacoma, Washington. It was a smaller town outside of it, so I was further from desirable schools and stores, but I still would be an easy sell according to this realtor. My car I needed until the move, but I did some KBB comp rates and felt I could get about $8,000 for it with depreciation. Jerry and I talked nonstop at this point. He kept pressing me about the sale of my home and things. I kept telling him there were some things I'd like to bring, but he told me he would buy me anything I wanted. He even showed me a copy of his bank statement with over $30 million in his account. He didn't want to show me this early in our relationship as he was guarded, but he said he let his guard down with me and told me to sell everything and he would buy me new. He didn't want to show me this early in our relationship as he was guarded, but he let his guard down with me. He told me to sell everything and he would buy me all new stuff. He made me feel loved and safe. I ended up having a yard sale and selling everything that wasn't bolted to the ground. I kept 5 suitcases of my shoes, clothes, and things I absolutely need. The rest went to the yard sale, and if it didn't sell, went to the donation station. I ended up making just over $2,000 on my yard sale. I sold literally everything but my furniture. My realtor put my house on the market and would get a bit more selling it furnished. Jerry was excited, and he said my immigration application was going well, and he would show me the progress. I told him I was asking $485,000 for my home with the furnishings, and he was happy to hear this. He kept encouraging me to sell my car, but I told him I won't do that till the last minute as I need to get around. He kept asking me how much I thought I could get for it, and asked if I had a bicycle I could ride and sell the car right now. I told him due to where I live, I couldn't do that. I need a car to get around, and he finally understood. He kept talking about our wedding day, sending me photos of this church in the UK he wanted us to marry and how he would fly my friends out and family. His son was excited to meet me too, and he told me his son knows all about the relationship and his son is accepting and loving and sees his dad happy. Jerry said he had to finish up one final contract before I came out. We were basically waiting on the marriage application and immigration application, and I had a potential buyer for the house while Jerry was away on his contract. I kept sending messages on WhatsApp, but he didn't reply, which was unusual. He finally replied telling me he was on the rig and that his phone was nearly out of minutes. He said he was having a hard time out there, and I asked if I could get him an iTunes card to load minutes for him. He said yes and asked for a $500 iTunes card, to which I told him I could get it tomorrow when I went to town and that I had a potential buyer for the house. He was excited and asked for the iTunes. He told me his account was on hold due to a fraud issue, and he thinks his ex, the scammer woman, tried to get into his account, so he was unable to load his phone with iTunes minutes. At the time, I didn't know what iTunes really did. I ended up buying the cards the next day for him, $500 worth. I know it's a lot of money, but we would be together soon. He told me he would get his account fixed soon and that the marriage license application and immigration application was approved and my visa would be approved just a few days later. I had a buyer for my home offer me $475,000, and I accepted the first offer. It was all coming together. I messaged Jerry on WhatsApp and let him know I accepted the buyer's offer and we would be together. He told me he was finishing up his contract, my visa was fine, and he couldn't wait to get home so he could prepare the house for me coming. He told me he would book my flight soon and let me know when the house closed and I had my money, and I was ready to go. I told him it would take about a month from now to close escrow and everything. Nothing works fast, and the buyers wanted an inspection. We kept our relationship going as strong as ever, and one night Jerry sent me a video of a ring. His voice was on it saying he bought this for me before his contract trip and wanted to surprise me and couldn't wait. It was a beautiful diamond ring. He said it was being held at a safe in the jewelry store until he returned from his contract, as he had paid $25,000 for the ring. I was in shock, and I've never had such a nice ring or really anything so expensive. Jerry said he was returning home, his contract would be finished, and he would close out his work duties. He showed me a photo of a view out the airplane window and said he was flying from Norway back to England. He took pictures of the Heathrow airport when he arrived, and then of the home he was driving to. Once home, he got a letter from the UK marriage visa and immigration application, and everything was finished. He sent me copies of the approval letters. The UK immigration sent an email saying I've been approved. Jerry booked my flight for 4 weeks from that Friday, and this was all happening, and it was all crazy. I would close escrow Thursday, and 1 week later and a day be on a flight to the UK. I worked my last week at my job and giving notice, and they had a going away party for me. It was becoming reality. Jerry told me every day how much he loved me. He sent me a copy of my airline ticket that he had booked for me, first class through Virgin Airways. I closed on my house and my money was funded. Here I was in a hotel room at this point, my 5 bags and my car, which I ended up selling to a dealership for cash the next day. Jerry showed me the house all sparkling clean and ready. He showed me our master bedroom and all the things he bought for my arrival. He was thoughtful. It was like a fairy tale. He asked about the house closure by this time, and it was all done, and that a dealership had bought my car, but I took less money, only $6,500. Less than I wanted, but I just wanted everything done. By this time I was ready to go, sitting in a hotel, waiting for time to fly. Car sold, house sold, everything ready. I received an email from the UK Immigration Department regarding my arrival information. It was a link to a website where I would need to declare any pets, food, allergens, and financial information. It stated, as an arriving immigrant with intention to marry, I would need to arrive with less than $5,000 in cash or bank balance or considered assets. I was confused by this, but it stated I would need to place any assets into a holding account prior to departure, and I could claim the assets once I arrived in the UK, processed the visa, and arranged for a bank account in the UK. They would not accept me having money in a U.S. bank account over $5,000 upon arrival. I called Jerry about this and the email. He told me he also got the same email, and he said it's a legal requirement I place any funds into a holding account by the government or it'll be seized. I told Jerry, we can transfer the money into your account in your name and then hold it until I arrive. But he told me that it's not possible because he's still working through the fraud issue by his ex, and his account is still being investigated and on hold. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. Jerry told me we could place the money into his work business account, and Jerry will open a Barclays account in my name for me and then transfer the money for me. I told him that that would be okay, but I would leave $2,000 in my U.S. account for travel expenses, remaining bills I had to pay, like my final water, light, and gas bills for the house, which I would be responsible for. This was all a hassle, but Jerry was helpful. He showed me he opened a joint Barclays account for us online. It showed it had my name and his name and our photos on the account. Since he's a UK citizen, he would be able to open the bank account and hold the money there as well. He even started the account with some money in it. He then told me to go to the bank and transfer my bank balance into his work account in London. He gave me the information to wire the money and told me once it hits his work account, he will then transfer it into my new Barclays account. Why he didn't transfer it into the Barclays account directly didn't make sense looking back, but at the time I thought we were doing the right thing and what the government had asked. I had to go to the bank with this information. Jerry gave me the name of his work account, which was a real company name, account number, BSB, and bank to the UK. I had no reason to question any of it. The name on the bank account matched the name of the company he worked for. When I went to transfer the money, though, it was not an easy process. Due to the amount, anything over $10,000 has to be declared and tons of forms have to be filled out. It would take some time for the money to transfer, and I let Jerry know this, and he said all would be fine. Here I was in a hotel with a little over $2,000 available in my bank, waiting to meet the love of my life. The money transferred faster than anticipated. My bank notified me of the transfer being successful. I had tax forms and things I had to declare that Jerry told me to worry about when we were married and he would deal with it. Then he asked for the confirmation that the money had been sent, and I showed him, and a few hours later he sent me a copy of my Barclays account with my balance. He said he had transferred the money from his work account to our new Barclays account right away. I felt a sense of relief and began my life. The night before my flight, we talked all hours. He told me he loved me so much. He couldn't wait to marry me. Him and his son, who had taken time off from school just to meet me, would be at the airport too. That morning I caught a taxi to the airport. I was dropped off and rolled with my luggage carrier to the Virgin Airways check-in. I was set to fly from Tacoma to Chicago to New York and on to London. I tried to scan the QR code on my flight itinerary that Jerry had sent me with the self-check-in system, but it wouldn't read the code. I ended up waiting in line to check in, giving the lady my information. She said the flight itinerary is incorrect and asked if I had another flight booking I could show her on my phone or something else. I panicked and showed her the text message Jerry sent me and a screenshot of the flight booking that he had given me. She ran my passport information again and told me the flight number and the information was not correct and that they didn't show me as a passenger. I asked her to please check again. I called Jerry and sent him a message, another message, and more messages that there was an issue, but he never responded or read them. I had the check-in person call for a supervisor, as I knew this flight information was correct and explained the situation. She also said the flight itinerary was not correct. She also noted the flight number doesn't exist with their airline. She sent me over to United and a few others to check. Perhaps the airline name was incorrect. But nothing. No airline had me booked as a passenger. I called Jerry over and over with no answer, no text, no nothing. Text after text went unread. I started to really have a panic attack and think maybe something was wrong. Maybe he got the name of the airline wrong or he booked it incorrectly. Maybe I have the wrong day. I spoke to a few supervisors and tried to get on another flight, even if it meant paying for it so I could fly out. But they had nothing until tomorrow. They couldn't book me on anything, and the cost would be over $3,000 with such a short notice. I ended up calling a friend of mine to come pick me up and asked if I could stay with her until I got this sorted. She came to get me. I was flustered at this point and ended up staying with her. During this time, I called Jerry. I was frantic and upset. I left voice message after voice message and voice note and recording and text message. I ended up calling my bank to inquire about the transfer, to which it had gone through to the account I provided, and they couldn't return the money or do anything. I had signed a waiver stating I knew who I was sending the money to. My friend got involved with this whole situation and started to dig into the flight information. She pointed out some inconsistencies in the font and text within the flight itinerary and the fact that the QR code wouldn't even scan. She said it looked warped. She tried calling Jerry from her phone, to which a man answered, but it wasn't Jerry. It was another person with a similar accent. I thought a German man. When my friend asked who this was, he asked who she is, and she started yelling about how my flight wasn't working. He hung up and never answered any more calls. My friend asked for photos of Jerry, which she ran through Google Image. Come to find out, the photos were of a Turkish doctor. Apparently his pictures are used often in online love scams. I felt absolutely sick. I ended up going to the police with the entire situation. They filed a fraud report, and my bank also filed a fraud alert and ended up closing my account. They said they cannot refund the money or even get it back, as I knowingly sent it, and it wasn't skimmed or hacked, and I signed a bunch of legal documents prior to sending this money, stating I knew who I was sending it to and all the tax forms. I absolutely lost my mind. I continued to try and call Jerry, messaged him, telling him he was nothing but a fraud, telling him the FBI will come get him, every threat I could think of, but still no reply. I think he might have blocked me, as my messages were not even looked at. I contacted the UK bank the money went to, and they opened a fraud investigation, but the money in question had already left that account. She told me this happens often in fraud and they will investigate, but the money is gone. I was sick and without a home. My friend said I could stay with her until we got everything figured out, but I ended up checking myself into a hospital. I spent 2 weeks in the psychiatric wellness center as I had a total mental breakdown. I'm ruined, and the only glimmer of hope is that I was able to get my job back and I found an apartment in Tacoma to live in. I walk to work or I get rides from my friends and coworkers. I've spent weeks, months, and will likely spend years trying to find out who was behind this. Many people have told me it was a scammer, likely a young guy. I see the Turkish doctor's photos are used often in scams, and I even get friend requests on my social media from the very same pictures Jerry used, but with different names. I get phone calls at all hours of the day and night from numbers I do not know. Some pretend they know me and that we've met online. Some just ask who I am and hang up. One man called me with a similar accent to Jerry, and I actually thought it was him, but it wasn't, and he asked if we could just be friends. I block a lot of numbers, but keep my phone number the same. In the event something happens, like the fraud squad in the UK, the police here or the FBI need to get in touch with me. I touch base with the fraud squad and the banks in the UK on a weekly basis. I think they're sick of me. I want to find out who did this to me, but the reality is setting in. I likely will never know. The scammer, who spent hours, weeks, months, and God knows how much time on pretending to love me, made nearly $500,000 off of me. I won't stop until I know who I spoke to. The relationship and the words seem so real to me that I cannot get over the fact that it was all fake. I think some of the feelings were real. That's my story of how I nearly lost $500,000 and my mind. And we'd like to thank this lady for sharing her story. When we think of romance scams, oftentimes we think of people losing $1,000 or a few gift cards. But in reality, scammers are stealing lots of money from some people, and this happens quite often. If you'd like to share your online encounter with a romance scammer, whether you lost money, gift cards, or you didn't lose any money but you'd like to share your encounter, you can find us via email scammingscammers@gmail.com. Tell us your story, bring any screenshots, photos, information that you have. We'll verify your story and we will narrate it into a video. Please give us a few weeks to do so, as we do get a ton of email, and I will reply as soon as possible. Until then, stay safe.